Hello guys, this is Nick from nickmavromatisproductions, and in this video I wanted to show you 5 EQ mistakes that most people still do in 2018 when mixing guitars. Okay, so let's dive into a project and start seeing those mistakes one by one. Mistakes 1 and 2, I want to explain myself a little bit before I dive into those two. I think the main reason that these mistakes still occur today is that we used to rely on digital pedal boards somewhere between 10 to 15 years ago, and those pedal boards back then, like the Line 6 Pod series or the Boss GD10s, I think those were some of the most famous and some of the best. They sounded really shitty, and because of that we needed to do whatever we could in order to make them as good as we could. We used to do all sorts of crazy stuff with equalizers in order to achieve that, and 5 years later from the digital pedal boards we were introduced to some of the first plugins that were some of the first amp sims, and those amp sims sounded a little bit better, but they still sounded unrealistic and the tones still weren't satisfying enough. So we used again to do all sorts of crazy stuff with equalizers and whatever else we could in order to make them sound more realistic. But a couple of years earlier from now, some companies introduced some very good plugins like Bias Amp from Positive Grid. It had matching EQ options and it sounded really good. And TH2 by Overloud was one of the best sounding plugins that I've ever used, and has very good cabinets. And then there are companies that are exclusively putting out cabinet IRs that are awesome, and there are also companies like Mercurial that are now putting out plugins that are dedicated after one particular unit at a time, and those things are so well modeled and so carefully modeled that they sound like the real thing, and you should try them out too if you haven't. And my point is that nowadays we have good plugins. So Positive Grid has put out Bias Amp 2, which is even better, and Overloud has put out TH3, which again is awesome, and Mercurial is putting out more and more plugins. And what I want to say is that we're still applying those techniques back then to the good plugins that we have nowadays. And when you apply this kind of EQing to the good sounding stuff that we have right now, you're destroying your sound, you're destroying your tones. And of course, one of the main problems that causes your mixes to sound thin or a bit more digital than the professional mixes that you hear is wrong EQing. And so let's go see mistake number 1, which I would call intense and narrow filtering. So first of all, let's take a listen to the mix that we have for today. So you took a taste of the mix, which is from a song by my band. We're called, by the way, Us The Imminent. So it would mean a lot for me and my band if you could show some support for these videos that I'm doing for you. So you can go subscribe to our channel or check out our songs and see if you like them, and follow us on our social media and whatever else. Okay, so let's solo one guitar. Let's find it center. And yeah, so as I've said, mistake number 1, I call it narrow and intense filtering. So what most people would do for starters when they mix guitars is they would take a digital equalizer, apply a low cut and high cut, make the cue as intense as it can be without boosting any frequencies, and they would take it up to 120 to 150 Hertz, and then the high cut filter again, aggressive cue, and it would go to like 10,000 K. This is like a rule for some reason. Actually, I know the reason, because this top end from 10 kilohertz and above, it sounded really shitty on the digital pedal boards back then, and those frequencies are what used to make mostly those digital pedal boards sound very digital and very fake. So we used to cut those frequencies, but in the good tones that we have right now, the frequencies between 10 kilohertz and 20 kilohertz are something that our tone needs in order to be airy and sibilant. Let's take a look to the spectrum of a guitar. So frequencies from 7 to 8K and above start to drop off dramatically. So you see that up to 20K you have a reduction up to, I don't know, minus 85 dB. So this means those frequencies do not bother you. They are there for a reason. The cabinets, the real cabinets that you use their IR, have let those frequencies there for a reason. And this reason is because they give a nice air to your tone and a nice top end. So you see that at about 10K you have minus 8 to minus 9 dB reduction, which means that they're not that loud. You do not need to cut off those frequencies completely. What you do need to do instead is take this filter a bit higher, up to, I don't know, 12 or maybe even 15 kilohertz, and make the cue more gentle, more smooth and more subtle, because this way you don't cut off those frequencies completely. You just reduce them a little bit if they do indeed bother you and you need to do something for them. I would suggest that you do this. Take the filter a little bit higher and make the cue more gentle, because you want those frequencies to be there, you just don't want them to be too loud. The same thing goes for the low cut filter. You don't want to take it too high, because you are killing the low end and the body of your guitars. So what you need to do again is take it like a lot lower. I would take it down to 80 Hertz maybe, and make the cue a lot more gentle. And you see that if I do this, those frequencies that are up to 300 Hertz are already reduced right there. And when you reach the 80 Hertz, you have already minus 6 dB to those frequencies, which is something that lets you have the bottom end and the body of your guitar, but to a point where it will not bother you or make a problem to your mix. Mistake number 2 again occurs, as I said, for the reason that I mentioned earlier, and I would call mistake number 2 weird EQ shapes. And what I mean by that is, I've seen many people like saying that if you are a djent guy, take, I don't know, you want to boost the frequencies at around 500 Hertz, and you want to cut a little bit of the 1 kilohertz, and then because we always say fuck 4K, let's fuck 4K. They used to do shapes like that, plus the filters that they're putting, and they end up with things like that, which is very funny. And if you feel like your guitar needs to be EQ'd like this, the mistake that you're doing is either you haven't leveled your guitar properly, or you've made the wrong tone. So you can either level your guitar properly first and then EQ your guitar, or if you're leveling your guitar and you see it doesn't match with the other instruments, then you need to go back and remake your tone. I don't know, choose another arm, choose another cow, but you need to remake your tone if you feel like it needs such kind of EQing. So if your tone is made properly with the good plugins that we have right now, as I've said, after you've leveled your guitar properly, you need to hear your guitars with all the instruments together. Like that, and then say that okay, my guitars need a little bit of boosting up to maximum 3 dB to, I don't know, to the mids, let's say. So if your tone is made properly, the only EQing that you would need to do is 1 to 2 bands maximum and up to minus or plus 3 dB, and this is all. So let's go to mistake number 3, which happens because of the palm mutes and the heavily distorted guitars and the low tuned guitars. So when your guitar has palm mutes, you see that there's a rise in the level of your guitar. So you would either tame that with an equalizer, find those frequencies which are around 150 to 250 Hertz. So you would take a digital equalizer and reduce those frequencies and say probably gone, or use a compressor. And the wrong with those two options is that you're applying either compressing or attenuation of frequencies during the whole performance of your guitar. Why this is wrong? Because the palm mutes are not there all the time. You need to find a way to apply this kind of EQing or this kind of leveling only to those frequencies and only when there are palm mutes. So you don't want to use a normal equalizer and you don't want to use a normal compressor. What you want to use instead is either a dynamic equalizer or a multiband compressor. So what you need to do is, I'll take a dynamic equalizer. You can apply the exact same technique with a multiband compressor that I'm gonna show you right now. So how do you level that? How do you set this up properly? You play back your guitars to the parts where there are palm mutes. Let's find a part with palm mutes. So what you need to do is you need to find the level of your guitars when there aren't palm mutes, which is somewhere around here. So the general level of my guitars are there, minus 26.7 dB. So you see that each time there are palm mutes, the level of my guitar exceeds the threshold. With this threshold, I am telling the dynamic equalizer that each time my guitar exceeds that level, I want to reduce at that frequency right there, which is exactly what you need to do in order to cut those frequencies momentarily, not during the whole performance, or drop the level of your whole guitar with a compressor. So, how do you set up the level that you're gonna attenuate out your band? You're finding the highest peak that your guitar has when there are palm mutes. So you see that sometimes it jumps up to minus 14.1 dB. So it was 21.7. So 22 dB, let's say, minus 14 dB equals 7. So you want to do a 7 dB reduction with a little bit of a wider Q, just a little bit. So you see I have up to, I don't know, 3 dB reduction when there are palm mutes, and this is how you get rid of that. So let's go to mistake number 4, which I call too many notches, and this is the following. You will take a digital equalizer and you're gonna check out the spectrum of your guitar. Either visually or because you hear something that you don't like and you're starting to cut off frequencies like that. And you see all that rich spectrum of your guitars and all those harmonics that they produce because they are so heavily distorted, and you think that those harmonics shouldn't be there or they shouldn't be that loud, and let me tell you something, they should be there and they should be sometimes that loud. So no matter how many times you search for modes like that into distorted guitar, equal times you will find such ones, because a distorted guitar is supposed to have that many harmonics and they don't need to be cut. So what you need to do instead of that is just listen to your guitar inside the mix, and if you're hearing frequencies that you don't like, then you go and apply that kind of EQing. And if you don't have ears that are not trained that well in order for you to hear those notches inside the mix, what you can do is find 1 or 2 loudest harmonics of your guitar that are probably a little bit louder than they should, and cut those 1 or 2 frequencies only, and that's that. So I find the loudest harmonics of my guitar. One was that, and you don't want to reduce it very much. You just want to make this frequency somehow equal to the other frequencies. So you want to reduce it by, like, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 dB, and that's it. So with and without. So you see, with one band of notching, it's a lot smoother already, and if you apply too many notches, you're gonna destroy the character of your guitars and you're gonna make it sound digital and fake, because real guitars need to have those harmonics. You just need to tame 1 or 2 that may be too high in matter of leveling, because of wrong mic placement or because of, I don't know, wrong pickups or something like that. And final mistake, number 5, which is not exactly a mistake but is actually a tip that is gonna help you avoid all the previous mistakes, is using an analog equalizer or an equalizer that's inside a channel strip instead of a digital equalizer. And the reason for that is that the digital equalizers have as many options as you want, and you can do whatever you want, and this is sometimes a good thing, but if you don't know what exactly you're doing, it can be destructive, because you're applying too many bands to your guitar, or filters with wrong Q and too many notches, as I've said, and stuff like that. But with an analog equalizer, you know, you've heard people saying that you can't go wrong with that console or with that equalizer, because the logic behind analog equalizers or analog gear in general is that they don't give you too many options. Let's see what I mean by that. Let's take a classic channel strip from SSL. So this is an SSL channel, and you see that the equalizer, it has on it 1, 2, 3, 4 bands and 2 filters, 1 and 2. So what you need in order to EQ a guitar is just those 4 bands and 2 filters, and really nothing more besides the notching that you're gonna do with a digital equalizer and the frequencies that you want to reduce from the palm mutes with a dynamic equalizer or a multiband compressor. And this is it, nothing more in matter of EQing, nothing more. Also, the beneficial things with using channel strips or plugins that are modeled after analog gear is that they give an analog warmth to what you're applying it on. So those were the 5 EQ mistakes on mixing guitars that people still do in 2018. So, thank you for watching my video, and if you found it informative or if you learned things, then subscribe to my channel and be sure to hit the bell button to get notified when I upload something, because I'm gonna do more videos like that and you're gonna want to see those for sure. Also, be sure to check out my band if you liked our song, the song that we used for this video, and it would mean a lot if you could show some support. Go subscribe to our channel, find us in our social media, and you know the rest of it. Till next time, hope you're fine, see you soon.